Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Martino Puccio here, alongside you guys, continuing the Serie A previews on this channel for specific teams. Yesterday, we had AS George on for the Roma preview, so be sure to go and check that one out. And today, a good friend that I've been making content with for Sharma, I don't know how many years it's been at this point, maybe
Five,
close to
six,
half a decade, maybe a little bit
yeah.
longer. I have no idea. Uncle Sharma, if you don't know him, in the Serie A Twitter space or just content space. Everything's on the bottom here. Description of the video, one of the best YouTubers in general for footy content, and then especially Inter. So glad that this YouTube account has stuck around. They have not taken you down. How have you been? You're all ready to go for another season. You've been on the rise lately, big time too, like a big jump in subs, right? I've seen.
No, just steady rise. Just I think the transfer news does help because Inter was so quiet for start of the first few weeks or the first couple of months of the transfer window, and now suddenly we've just come alive with the multiple signings. So yeah, that
Hmm.
usually helps with the bringing a bit of hype, bringing a bit of views. So that has helped recently. But we just keep it going. But I'm excited for the new season. I've been watching the previews that you've been doing. I enjoyed the one with George yesterday. He managed to not rage bait yesterday, which is good.
I was surprised. I was kind of hoping he did, but he did it. He was a very normal and I don't know, analytical video, like very fair, not like his usual self where he thinks Mullen will break Higuain's record in the league for goals scored. But he's still great though, like short form content as you've seen.
Yeah.
So you talked about it again. Inter late into the window, and it was later into the window, but like to see a lot of your supporters really just crash out for a couple of months is the best way to describe it, because we're really fully in this oak tree era of Inter where Pepe Morata still running things, but you could tell by the way they're being ran that it's not to the liking of Interisti, right? And I would just like to like preface this by saying you guys waited a long time with the finances, similar to us in different ways that we self-imposed it. You really had to do it because of the financials with Steven Song. And now Inter slowly gotten out of that era, making deeper runs. Didn't really know what to expect after waiting so long, right? Like they didn't have to truthfully sell a lot of players in order to bring in some. And here we are. Jed Spence, Curtis Jones, as of yesterday, you had a video on this as well. John Stones on the free, the Beppe special, bringing in Provedel, Stankovic, obviously, who was great in Belgium, now fully becomes an Inter player, and integrating him is a huge plus for Atezi out the door. But let's start with the additions. Sharma, Dumfries out. Spence and Curtis Jones are the two big. Well, they're all Englishmen. That's the first part of it. How are you feeling about adding the English to this Inter squad? Because as you mentioned, with subscriber counts and viewership, it's expanded massively now. So I get a lot of eyeballs on Inter this year. So what do you make of Spence? And then we'll go to Jones and Stones.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. It's interesting how English heavy we've gone, like you said, but it's clearly not by chance. It's clear that it was a direction that the club wanted to take. It's a direction that I didn't agree with. I think a lot of the fan base didn't agree with, not because I don't like English players or I don't want to get players from the Premier League. I mean, I live in England, so I can't. That's the league I watch the most, second after Serie A. But it's the fact that I thought going for players from the Premier League, you're always going to get, especially these days, overpriced. Before, in the past, I felt like you could get good value, like you guys, when you got Pulisic and Loftus Cheek, those Tomori, those kind of guys. And now I feel like the prices in the Premier League have gone so crazy that I thought we were wasting our time chasing Spence, Romero, Jones. But in the end, actually has worked out. We just had to be patient. And overall, I think they've definitely moved the needle. I think we've improved the floor of the squad. I don't know if we've improved the ceiling of the squad, but definitely the floor has been improved. The depth is now unreal, especially midfield. Like I don't remember an Inter team since the 2010 Inter team with this type of depth in midfield. So, man, I was patient. I was not one of the ones that crashed out. Weirdly, I was confident. even though I didn't really trust Oak Tree, because I've been making videos on my channel about the financials of Inter, like you mentioned, and we had space in our budget this year to play with, and they are playing with it. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've both kind of seen. Maybe that correlates to the stadium owning for ownership. I don't know. I think that's it's all up in the air because we also had an FFP agreement, and so that obviously gets us to do more things. And Kush does a great job of highlighting it. We're not going to really talk about Milan in that regard. So we'll start with Jed Spence effectively coming in to replace Denzel Dumfries. And the funny thing is too, I hear all this talk about Dumfries and like, oh, well, like he's such a great Inter player, and that is true, and I think he did a lot to contribute to Inter. However, last season, I don't even think that's really the case. So to have the success that Inter did, along with Kivu last year, still make a decent amount on this player where he goes to Real Madrid to get in a younger, potentially more effective player immediately in Jed Spence in comparison to last year. That's where you could immediately kind of say, I think Inter upgraded in that spot. Whether or not Spence is really the true player that we saw at the World Cup remains to be seen a little bit, I think, because his body of work isn't as true as some of the other two players here.
Yeah.
Was this the number one priority on your list? I know everybody would have preferred Palestra, but for a fraction of the price, Jed Spence is still very good.
Yeah. He was not on my like I made a video of the when we missed out on Palestra, or when I thought we were missing out on Palestra, of like alternatives, and he was not on that list of mine because he's more defensive first. He's quite, he's a bit of a different profile compared to Dumfries, but in our system, even though he's barely scratched double digits in his whole career, I think our system will allow him to thrive, especially with his athleticism in Serie A. As much as I hate that comment of Premier League players coming to Serie A and dominating,
It's just
physically.
true though. Like the
Yeah,
success rate
it
is
is,
just too
it's
high.
true. So I think he will make a difference. And the price, I was initially, again, when I going back to what I was saying earlier, when they were mentioning Spurs 45 million, I was like, no, please, that's just way over the top. In the end, 31 million, some bonuses in there. It's not too bad of a price. So at 26 years of age, we've got, as you said, Dumfries. I was always every summer I was always on the train of, yeah, we can sell Dumfries. I'm sure we can find someone else out there. As much as he was good, I think Inter fans have rose-tinted glasses when it comes to Denzel because he was such a big moments player. And like you said, last season, people seem to forget he was injured for like 4 months. He didn't have a good start even before the injuries.
Right.
But then right at the end, he came back and scored 2 or 3 big goals that clinched the Scudetto. So he's finished on a real high. But in general, his game was pretty limited outside of his athleticism and that box crashing. So I feel like Spence can add something different too. So I think I wouldn't call it an upgrade, but at least a sideways move, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. You could argue younger, fresher. And honestly, it doesn't need to be that massive of an upgrade because I think the wingback depth that Inter have at this point, when Andy Diouf had a very good preseason, seems like he could be making an impact over there as well. And I know that's just preseason. I'm not one of those people, as you know, but I don't know. I just think this is Inter knows what works in their system. That's why you guys have been able to replace everybody. It's managers too. It's not the same, and it's not to downplay Kivu or Inzaghi or anything, but each replacement has been bang on by Morata that I think people definitely need to allow him to also do this. So Curtis Jones is the other one. And this is Sharma. Jones has been on the radar with Inter for a while. This was
Yeah.
prior to even the window opening up and whatever else would have transpired. I'm sorry. Like, this is just a clear cut upgrade. Price, I can't even begin to imagine that price would matter too much for Inter fans if there's really only two big purchases. As you said, is this like ceiling elevating? Maybe not necessarily, but I think to your point, the depth is just so fantastic now that you could be fresher in Europe, and we'll talk about like the Europe side of things where hopefully a Bodo Glimt repeat doesn't happen for you guys. Hoping you're saying that, not me. um, but yeah, Curtis Jones has been that young star that burst onto the scene with Liverpool, from that crop of players that really started to develop and was strong. With Premier League experience, as you mentioned, all the experience in all the top competitions, title winning sides. I don't think that Inter can go wrong here. Would this have been where you prioritized your money, spending this much on a midfielder, or you would have preferred a center? I still personally think center back probably should have been where you spend that money. Obviously, Stones is here, but on the Curtis Jones sides of things, this is a good player, but not necessarily maybe the one that you would have spent on.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like as you said, I would have probably gone for a centre back. Still, I would like to get rid of Pavard if possible, but it looks like he's staying now. Yeah, even one creative player behind the likes of Lautaro Thuram, like that kind of X factor player to add in. I would have put put the money towards that, but it seemed to be the obsession of Kivu, like you mentioned. So we played Liverpool last year in the Champions League, and they beat us 1-0 with a non-existent penalty. But Curtis Jones was basically man of the match in that game, and since then it seems like Kivu could not get over Curtis Jones. And yeah, we tried to get him in January, but we couldn't get rid of Frattesi back in January. So now this time we finally got rid of Frattesi and Curtis Jones come in. So as upgrade goes, Frattesi to Curtis Jones, can't complain there. So he's definitely going to add a lot of technique, and he's a very un-English type of player. Like I'm looking forward to watching him. He's so good on the ball.
Yeah, I think he's a fine player, and I can understand the I think really what happened is when you re-sign someone like Mickey, and I don't know, like there's like certain things I question with Inter. I totally understand why the supporters get upset. We were like, why is Mkhitaryan staying? I get why he's staying, but you don't have to do this anymore. You don't need to keep a player like that.
Yeah.
I think getting rid of an Acerbi, it was just time at this point. Pavard,
Yeah.
obviously, that seemed to be a more difficult. Inter, I think you guys had a little bit of a struggle with getting rid of certain players. This like Pavard, that's really difficult to offload because I don't truly believe that anybody kind of wants to pick up on him. I guess with the financials as well. And if he can find a permanent home, is he that bad of an option with the choice that he'll be on the pecking order? No, not necessarily. But I think, and you've been a proponent of like, I'll sell Bisek if that means we could raise funds to get another center back in that role. I think you've kind of more or less stayed the same in that crop of the area. And we could talk about the final one here with John Stones. Now, this is clearly contingent upon his health, which has been in question for quite some time now. That's sort of the issue. A healthy John Stones, however, completely changes the dynamic for Inter on all fronts. It's fairly obvious. This is one of the better center backs of his generation, especially in the Premier League. I think that gets lost on just the kind of player that I guess that he's regarded as. I don't think anyone has ever put him in the conversation for best center back in the world, but he was consistently really strong for City for quite some time. And much like we have our stigmas for Prem fans, right? I think there is a stigma of Serie A supporters not giving enough credit to English players or Premier League players for being good enough. I think John Stones is one of those players in that category. What do you make of this signing? This is a typical Inter Bosman transfer that we've seen the past few years, and it still has upside. Like I can't really hate on it. What do you make of the deal? Too pricey in terms of wages, too risky with his health. What do you make?
Yeah, no, I changed my mind on it from we originally were linked maybe a couple of months ago when he first, it was clear that he was going to leave Man City. And then, yeah, I was like, stay away because apparently he wants 6-7 million net plus commissions and all this. And, his injury history is crazy. But then I watched at the World Cup and he looked pretty good at the World Cup.
Right.
Made a deep run with England. He was the starter. And apparently, I spoke to Man City fans as well. It was basically the last season. It wasn't even injuries. Pep just kind of throws him out because that's what Pep does. Once, he moves on from you, that he's pretty cold like that. So then, yeah, I've changed my mind on it. And in the end, he came, he's accepted 4 million net, which means, it wasn't about the money for him. That's, very, average level salary in the Inter squad. So he's completely fine. 32 years old, so he's not even that old. And
Right.
ball playing ability, I think if there's one speciality in John Stones is that ball playing ability, like him, Bastoni, Akanji, like in just in terms of ball playing ability, I feel like that probably is the best centre back trio in Europe right now. Not talking about defending purely, but just ball playing ability from the back.
Course,
So
yeah.
I can't be. Yeah, that's a really good deal. I just, as you said, if he stays fit, that is a big if because it's been an issue for his whole career, not just recently. So maybe the Italian food, the Italian weather, different training methods, we can fix him.
Yeah, I think so. I think he'll put in a good couple of years there if he's just able to stay healthy. Now here's a bit of more of the exciting side, I think, with Stankovic. Anytime you turned on Twitter during last season, you would see Interisti talking about his performance in Belgium and how well he's been. And this was one of those players that had signed on, loaned him out to get experience in a very respectable Belgian league, one that's very popular for Serie A clubs to kind of raid at times. Obviously, Milan have not had the greatest success hit rate just yet. We'll see on your Shadi this year. Stankovic is another one of those players that you were also hoping not to sell this summer to help fund the market, be a part of this team because of his potential. And now with him and Sucic, it's a little bit and Curtis Jones, you could argue as well, because he is younger than the crop of midfielders that Inter had, because some of you guys were very old. This is a little bit of ushering in the new guard of young Inter midfield as I guess they sort of transition and get younger, as I mentioned. So what do you make of this? I think this is huge. I love when a bigger Serie A club does not sell off a talented player like this just to try and fund other moves in the transfer market. You try to keep a player like this and then add to the squad. Inter did just that, and I think that's why a lot of you were optimistic. Give us the details on Stankovic a little bit, because I don't see an Inter fan that dislikes this player.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's the Stankovic, the name, the link straight to his dad, who was one of our best midfielders of the modern era. So there's that link straight away. But it's more than that. He, as you said, like he was Player of the Year for Club Brugge in Belgium. So yeah, he had that trajectory like Yashari, basically, like coming off a massive season in Belgium, but not just in Belgian league. Like he played well in the Champions League games as well for Club Brugge, which is where I actually watched him. And I was impressed. And we have Hakan, who was on his last year of his contract. He still looks like he's able to do a job. I mean, last year, a lot of us Interisti were kind of doubting him, and he proved us that he's, apart from the injuries part of things, he did prove a lot of us wrong that, he still has it in him and he can come up big. But with those injury issues, those concerns, at least now we never really had a proper vice Hakan. It was like sometimes you put Barella in there, sometimes you put Zielinski in there. At the end of the season, it was Sucic rotating in there. Right. So now I feel like with Stankovic, we actually have the real vice Hakan in there. But he can also play as a mezzala, I think, in the other roles, because he's shown at Club Brugge a different side to his game that I didn't know he had, like goal scoring. So, yeah, I think anything they were talking about offers from Premier League for 40 million euros, like, yeah, as you said, there's no point. I would much rather keep a player like that and have him rotated in this midfield depth.
Yeah, and again, I mean, you clearly just highlighted it. Hakan has 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah.
Why are we offloading a player that is likely going to be his vice that could take over? This could just be a transitional year for that. I am surprised Inter haven't fielded a contract offer to Hakan. He could just return to Turkey with the way they're doing after this season, the way the salaries are over there, and I know you know this. How can a star player of the national team not get a huge offer? Like, I could see a Turkish club offer him a 5-year contract that is definitely wealthy financially. And why not just stay at Inter? It's a big club another year, pick up another Scudetto, which is likely. And we'll kind of just jump into that because I know we're a little bit pressed for time. I don't want to take up too much. The predictions for this season. I think everybody has comfortably stated that Inter should be the first repeat winners since Juve. I know we've had this discussion multiple times after the past couple of Scudetti win. Where Inter seemingly slip up the next season, whether or not that's because ownership and management didn't have the capabilities of helping the squad further along and buff them up. I feel like Inter's markets, and you've highlighted this plenty on social media, that, they don't help the squad after they win the league title. It's always just a bit stagnant. Players regress a little bit, may not have the best of seasons. We know Conte had walked and Inzaghi took over. However, I like to maintain this. The 2 titles you did lose after winning the Scudetto were on the final match day. because Inter just didn't have enough, I think, in other matches to supplement for that fact. Where Inter probably should have won by 5 or 6 points, but they're gifting away matches. However, also the competitors are too. Who's playing once a week with a really great manager that could supplant you guys? That's the other aspect of it. You're deeper now than I think any of these other defending title teams, as we just highlighted too. I think where the pressure could change this season for repeating is a focus on Europe after what happened last year. That's the only thing, and I don't even think that's going to be that big of a deal. I think that comes with Kivu's experience as a manager. Maybe that hurt him a little bit. If there was any negative to his first full season as a manager, it was big games and what happened against Bodo Glimt. To turn that around, I think would be the primary focus. But winning a double is great in your first year. How do you see Serie A, Champions League, Coppa Italia, and Supercoppa are secondary here? But how do you see this going again? Because you guys have been competing on all fronts, making deep Champions League runs outside of last year and winning titles.
Yeah, I mean, this must be the first year that I remember since started making content, or since probably 2010, that we are such favorites. I don't think I've seen I've maybe seen one or two content creators or other predictions that have predicted someone else other than Inter to win it. And it's like, we can't hide this year. It's like we are overwhelming favorites now. Usually I come on your channel and I'm always, try to be balanced and, like, chill out, Martino, anti-jinx and all this. But there's no way that Inter fans, we can do that this year. We are overwhelming favorites. The depth, as you said, is crazy. It looks like we're not done yet in the Mercato as well. There's rumors of, if Luis Enrique goes, we could make some more moves, or even try to add another attacker, a fifth attacker / winger to help Kivu change formation. So, yeah, this expectation is to try to do the double. I don't think anyone's done the double since Juve back in the mid 2010. So,
oh, you're saying back-to-back doubles?
Yeah. Sorry, back to back.
Okay, yeah. I was like, you just did the double.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. Yeah, go ahead. No, you're good. I'll go.
Yeah. Well, double. But yeah, I think you can tell with Inter fans, like, because we obviously, like, you guys would follow every interview of Milan players. We follow every interview of Inter players, and you can already tell there's a focus towards Champions League this season. So, like you said, there could be that danger of overlooking Serie A like we have done in the past, or just in the past maybe it was more we just didn't have the squad to compete on.
I think it was
2 or 3 fronts. Yeah. Under Inzaghi, unfortunately, we just we would have a very good starting 11, but the substitutes.
Arnautovic and Taremi, you could just say it. They cost you the Scudetto against Napoli. That's simple.
Yeah.
And then also like the depth, the year Milan won. I think your depth cost you severely. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we don't really have that excuse this year. So there is pressure definitely on Kivu now. I think last year there was a lot of doubts on him. I saw predictions of Inter finishing outside of the top 4 last year.
That was true.
This year is not that. So Kivu definitely now has to deliver the Scudetto minimum, and in the Champions League is minimum quarterfinal. That's my expectation. I think anything below that is an absolute failure. And I think that's also Oak Tree's probably expectation, because if they're pumping, the squad cost has gone up by more than 20 million compared to last year. So I think they're at least expecting an extra, 20-30 million income, which is at least a couple of more rounds in the Champions League.
You go deeper in Supercoppa, you get a couple million, right? I mean, that's where.
God. Well, actually, to be fair, because we didn't win it last year, I wouldn't mind winning the Supercoppa this year.
Supercoppa is fun to win because it's it's a nice mid-season morale boost, I guess you could say. Didn't really help us much. Question marks about Kivu year 2. Pressure and expectations change. There obviously was that pressure last year. There's zero denying that. You're replacing Simone Inzaghi. But I think the Club World Cup performance really kind of helped him in the dressing room to refresh things. And I got to be honest with you, this was he surprised everybody. I guarantee he's still even surprised Interisti. We're not even just talking about Nima specifically. Plenty of people, because he did the right thing in the sense of not changing up too much in terms of style. Whereas, and listen, I know you can't really compare Milan because Milan's very poorly ran. We'll see if things change. But from the purely attacking pressing system to where you go to Conceição like 7 months later is a drastic change and shift. where Inter have stayed true to what their system has been, where you're pressing. Yes, it's three at the back. I know that makes people cringe and all that kind of stuff. But Kivu didn't try and change up too much. He was giving opportunities to younger players. I think even if Sucic did struggle at times, he was giving that player an opportunity. The development of Esposito, I think, was so huge. Boni, you could also even still argue a bit on the younger side. Had a nice season, a bit inconsistent, but that happens. Are you a little bit worried about Kivu in big matches? I don't think that's like this. I think it was a bit overstated. His initial big matches was bad. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
think there's any denying that. Then he kind of rounded into form later on in the year. Are you a little bit worried about that? Because I know Bodo Glimt that was like there's a difference between just narrowly getting eliminated, like you had against Liverpool in the past with Inzaghi, and then what happened against Bodo Glimt, where it just looked like you couldn't stop them at all. Does that side of it maybe worry you a little bit, or you think Kivu had some growing pains and he's going to be able to get the squad prepared and ready to go for matches like that?
No, I think that was a good growing experience for him last year. Again, I think it goes back to the players almost inadvertently had this focus towards the Serie A last year, which even like Akanji in one interview said, they asked him Scudetto or Champions League, and he said, 21, which is funny because John Stones has just come in and he said, we want to get the fourth Champions League. So it just shows you that's like, I think the mentality switch this season. So I'm not too worried. And in the Champions League, we didn't actually play that badly in the group stages. If Liverpool didn't get that Fugazi penalty on Wirtz, we would have been qualified in the top 8 because we beat Dortmund away. So that literally that 1 point that we could have got that in that game would have put us in the top 8, and we could have been talking, in a different way. Atletico away, when we lost, it wasn't a bad performance at all. We lost in the last minute of a corner. Set pieces were an issue at the beginning of the last year, but then we seemed to fix that. Liverpool also was a okay game. The Arsenal one was probably the worst one that we had. But in general, I think first proper year as a full-time coach. I'm not too worried. Obviously there's those concerns, but I'm not that concerned, honestly. I'm looking to seeing some growth this season, for sure.
That's the other thing here with you guys repeating. And I've talked about this with like Nick Diani and other preview podcasts that are still way too early to do because I don't know how some teams are going to look. However, I don't think enough of the teams behind Inter have made moves to leapfrog you at all. Truly. I think Allegri will go and get results out of Napoli, for example. Get results. However, I think people are severely, and this is where I think it'll expose who's better between Conte and Allegri, that Conte is still a very much better manager than I think Allegri is. What Conte still was able to do last year with Napoli was very impressive. Tons of injuries. He had them clearly second best squad, and I know whatever you want to blame him, not blame him, but De Bruyne and Lukaku were huge injury misses. They've also had other players miss quite some time. He still had them competing, and they were right there in second place. I'm not saying close to Inter. They weren't. However, we see what Max did with Milan. You're not going to have, I would think, strikers only score you 1 goal during an entire season, which I think affected Max. I think he would have gotten top 4 if we just get normal striker production. I think that was obvious. We are too much of a wild card. I still maintain that. I don't see anything regarding Como with Europe for the first time as of today, prior to like a Moise Kean move, supplanting you. Juve, I still don't buy it. I think they've made nice additions. There's no way you're telling me that this club is competing for the Scudetto just yet. So that's kind of the thing. Who improved that much in your eyes that you're scared of, Sharma? Is there anybody in this league that you could say, okay, if things break well for this team, they could definitely challenge us for the title? Or this is really, and I know you're not one of those people who is very comfy. Like it's always Spazza Inter regardless. Is there actually a club or team that you see coming up that could scare you? Roma as well. I don't want to omit them. Obviously, I talked about them yesterday. Who is really that side?
No, that's the reason why I was saying, we're overwhelming favorites because I don't see anyone in theory on paper as of today getting close to us because, as you mentioned, I mean, Napoli were the second best team and they literally haven't added anyone apart from Badiashile is even confirmed yet. Badiashile, by the way.
I don't even think he's been and also like I saw like Napoli fans free. I was like, that's kind of an overpay, and he's
Yeah,
just fine at best. I don't even think he's like game changing for them. Nicholas Jackson, I saw that link. Now that would get very interesting for them if healthy. I think he could play off of Hoyland. They'd be very dynamic. But if it's Gabriel Jesus as well, Sherman, like that this is you're talking about someone also made of glass. I
yeah,
wouldn't get that one. That's just if healthy, good. But yeah, to your point, Roma still need players, not enough
yeah.
depth there to
They're in the
challenge you
Champions
guys.
League, so that's going to take out of them. As you said, Como, the first season in the Champions League, they're going to be struggling to compete on both fronts. Juve are probably the ones that slowly are cooking a nice window. But that's the thing I was talking about it the other day on my channel. Is like every summer I feel like Juve do a good window, but then it just really flops. Like even still to this day, if you told me Douglas Luiz, Coop Miners, I still think in theory that was a good, 2 additions in midfield, but
They
it just
just
flopped so
I
badly.
never seen somebody misuse Scoop Miners like they did. I don't think they understood the player that he was to implement in the system.
Yeah.
The striker situation for Juve is very interesting. One could
Yeah.
argue, and I know Ahmed Badir made this on Sempre Milan as a point. Even if Vlahovic, whatever you thought of him, overpaid, too injury prone, he still produced when he was on the pitch. He
Yeah,
was still
yeah,
relatively productive. Jonathan David is a huge question mark, and that pressure is only going to mount for him. Kolo Muani has to regain that form from that first Juve stint. He was not good in the Prem. I think anybody who watched that was like, he
oh yeah,
just looked lost. I really don't know. That's a question mark. I still maintain this. From what I saw from Kenan Yildiz from March through the World Cup, was not a healthy player. I
no,
am concerned for him on his health. Maybe he just needed some rest and he's back to normal. He's the complete. He will go as Juve goes. Like
yeah,
it's as good as he'll play, he'll have to carry them into contention because he's clearly the game changer. Alabegovic is very young, Sharma. That's like a 19-year-old kid, 18, 19-year-old kid with not that much experience at the top flight to kind of have him be thrusted in there. I get the argument is Spalletti full year. Yes, I agree with that. I think that's what makes them more of a top 4 lock. Now you could talk about our boys just for a tad second if you want to touch upon it.
oh, I
There's been
forgot about you
seismic
guys.
there's been seismic moves in the market. I've bullied them for 2 years now, talking
Yeah,
about the revenues, this, the revenues, that. They had the money. They had the money for anyone who's not here. Just like I know you tell Inter fans, oh, we had the money. Oak Tree, no, we know we have it. So you finally see some of it. I'm still looking. I'm like, guys, there's 2 to 3 holes here. Leao may or may not stay. Amorim, does the system adapt? Is it really Manchester United that was the issue? Is Gonzalo Ramos really worth 75 million? Milan are the ultimate coin flip. I said this yesterday. I'll say it again. They could either go second place or they could be sixth. I'm really not sure. And as of today, it's an incomplete squad. I don't know. Listen. If we win another derby, I might lose my mind because you can answer the question. Would you rather keep losing derbies or win another double? By the way, Milan have never won a double. For
oh
people who don't know
no,
this,
as
this is
as
insane.
long as it has been that we've won a derby, I'd rather take the double. Thank you.
Of course, of course. You think anyone can? Also, we completely flamed out after the derby win. It
Yeah,
was horrible immediately. So I think Inter are primed for another title contending, trophy winning season. I don't see that changing anytime soon. And I'll ask you the last question. What happens if Inter don't win the title? What goes wrong for you guys outside of the injury side of things? Um, Lautaro is always consistent, but he's had stretches where we know Lautaro can sort of disappear, but there's so much better depth now with the Esposito, the Bonis, and the Turams of the world. Like, what goes wrong for Inter if they don't repeat? Like, what has to happen? Is it only injuries? I feel like that could be the only aspect. I don't see this 11 playing poorly enough in the league and not winning.
yeah, it could be. Yeah, like you said, like a Lautaro long-term injury, which hasn't happened up until now. So fingers crossed, touch wood, that doesn't happen. Something like that.
Oh, yeah.
The miss. If we go into the season, expecting Andy Juve to really, adapt to this right wing back position, and then he just doesn't. and you're stuck with like basically just Spence as the right wing back and misused Andy Juve on the right, that could be, you could end up in another situation where you've got a player that doesn't even know how to play that position for a lot of the season. And yeah, maybe so many midfielders, the morale is the competition, the management by Kivu maybe doesn't work out, and as I said, the concentration is maybe too much on Europe, and then you may end up in the position where you flame out of Europe, but then you've already compromised Serie A, and then you're in that state of what happened to us, last few seasons as well. So those are the things I can see, or maybe the goalkeeper position as well. We don't even know who the number one is.
Yeah, I know. We didn't even touch upon that. I guess we could mention that just for a quick second. Again, I liken this to what I was saying about Milan. Like, Diego Moreira just has to replace Pervis Estupiñán's production, really. That's not tough. Jan Sommer, I thought, was pretty bad for standards. I thought he had a rough year. He's still a lot older than people think. He's a smaller stature kid. However, he still did step up with some key saves down the stretch. He still had some big moments, but overall, it was a poor year. Martinez was such in a difficult spot mentally. I felt so bad for the guy, and especially in that position where it's the most mental on the pitch. Mm-hmm. Provedel is a very fine backup keeper, so you can supplement for that. I guess that's the biggest weakness there. That to me is still like a little bit. It's not a question mark. I don't think it's going to be such a negative for Inter that it would impact them this year. But I think it is a fair question mark, if anything.
Yeah, I feel like you could say we don't have a top class goalkeeper like you guys have. Magnon, who's returned to.
It depends on the shot.
Yeah. yeah. If it's near post or far post, but yeah. So that would be one of the few question marks. But apart from that, I think it really and we don't have like we don't have a Napoli outside of Europe that those kind of things, or like
exactly. That's what I was saying. Like Milan, if all broke well with Allegri, that's where's the competitor for it. And I also think, by the way, not to cut you off, I think Serie A is going to have a very strong year in Europe. I think everyone is going to do Juve and Milan, and whenever I can do a Serie A preview, Milan and Juve have the potential to make deep runs in Europa League.
I hope
Atalanta is a fine Conference League team.
They need to win the Conference League, man.
Outside of, by the way, I guess you could argue Allegri's style with Napoli in the Champions League. I love all three of like Inter, Roma, and Como in the Champions League. Their styles and managers and their whole approach can work. We'll see with Fabregas. It's a question mark. But I think if anyone's primed for a young manager to break out with that team, I think they could do it and make some noise. Qualify. As long as they qualify, it's a huge plus. And the same goes for Napoli. I think you guys have to get a top 8 spot would be huge for the league, and then the other three qualify. I think Roma and Gasp, that experience is there in Europe that they could do something. So I think it'll be a good year for Serie A in Europe. I think a lot of people are being a bit negative because last year sucked.
I think, you can't blame them, but I think Serie A is being overhated by the general viewer as well. Like I just see so much, Premier League content on like, Serie A this, Serie A that. But this year, I am looking forward to it. There is change because 9 of the managers in Serie A this year are under 45 years of age. So there's definitely like a generational change, at least on the benches. There's a lot of teams as well, like Cagliari, Parma, that are like super young. Well, I hope to see.
I know a lot of people don't like the way Parma play.
Yeah. Oh, Carlos Cuesta is an absolute terrorist. But I hope to see. I think the big change I want to see is the refereeing. Like the World Cup. The one thing I enjoyed about this World Cup was the way it was refereed, and I hope Serie A refereeing took a bit of not the breaks and not the commercial side of things, just like the way they let their things run. Penalties. I think it was the lowest amount of penalties ever given in the World Cup as well. I enjoyed that. So hopefully we see more of that, more football being played rather than stop, start.
That's probably the craziest thing that you've said. Serie A refereeing changing. No, I know what you mean, just in the overall point. I'm hoping for less controversies in big matches. I'll say that. It really just dominated the conversations. Like Juve and Inter have had incredible matches between the two of them in the past couple of years, and it consistently gets dominated by refereeing calls. And I get the one from last year. I get it. But my God, like at a certain point, we have to help ourselves because we also add fuel to the fire with these conversations of controversies and like Morata's running the league, and I'm all here for the actual memes, but please, like, unless you have something concrete, guys, you got to stop. But other than that, I want to wrap this up here because we've gone a little bit too far. So I apologize, Zio Sharma. So again, on your Twitter at our Sharms, 2 Z's there, Uncle Sharma on YouTube. You're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, you're on all the platforms that everyone can go and follow you. Again, your YouTube channel is some of the best amongst just all football creators. Forget Serie A. So again, just plug some other stuff that you want to that maybe people haven't seen quite yet.
No, you've said everything. It's always a pleasure to be on, man. And I love the growth that you and Matt have been doing over the last couple of years. And I hope it is going to be a good season because, of course, that helps us as well as content creators
thank God,
to generate views and a bit of hype. And as I said, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to going back to back.
Yeah. Good enough for you guys. The 21st century sucks. But yes, please go and follow and subscribe to everything via Sharma. And again, at Martino Puccio on here. Please get us to 500 subs. We're like 3 away on this channel. That'll help go towards monetization. If we get enough viewers and watchers for this episode, very close to the watch hour. So again, it's very important for us. Please go and support Sharma, George as well, and that Milan podcast. Serie A is back in 2 days. So everybody go enjoy. Sharma, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Ciao.